to the group.
Yeah, recording expert. That's me. Take it away, McLean.
Good morning, everyone. This is McLean Warren with Rise and Shine. I am here with my two co-hosts, Brendan Fields with Rebate and Dan Trumbull with Dan Trumbull Consulting. How is everyone doing today? Good. You look pumped, Brendan. You just like have this thing. I think you need one of those energy drinks that Isabella was drinking on the show yesterday.
I was up all night last night. We have this old cat, and she just meows and meows, and I don't know. It's just killing me. She's like, it's nocturnal, so I'm like kind of like glazy-eyed today, but it's all right.
I have a cat that does that too. He'll just like whine all night, and I'm like, "What? What do you want? I don't know. What do you want from me?"
Yeah, I think they're nocturnal. That's probably why, right?
They really are. Yeah.
Are they orange haired? I feel like the orange-haired cats are always the ones that are just very vocal.
Are they?
It could be.
Why
Ginger cats.
Yeah.
Hashtag gingercats.com or whatever. Yeah. Okay.
Well, it's always the gingers that get in trouble the most, right?
Seems that way.
Anyway, let me introduce our guest, Danielle. Would you like to kind of give a synopsis of yourself and your background?
So I'm Danielle Trogdon. I'm the principal attorney of the Trogdon Law Firm. I actually just opened my firm in February of this year. Had no idea that the pandemic would hit as hard as it did. Before that, I was at an intellectual boutique law firm, and so did all trademarks, trademark prosecution, that work there. Prior to that, I was at a midsize law firm doing corporate and business law. And currently I work, so go ahead, sorry.
No, you're fine. I didn't interrupt. I was just going to say, you said you have been in the e-commerce business for about 2 years, you said?
Correct.
And how did you make that transition from doing like corporate business stuff to specifically focusing on e-commerce?
So from the firm that I was at, so the mid-sized firm, I was actually approached by one of my friends to go over and work at that trademark firm. And so that's what I kind of made that jump from it was a jump. And so that was and it was just one of those, it was a good fit. I liked working with the clients that I was working with there. Most of them were e-commerce, so online businesses in a variety of aspects. And that's what I've continued to do since moving out on my own.
Did you have to like relearn a bunch of stuff? Is that, when you, is it, I guess my question is brick and mortar, the laws around, corporate life with, real brick and mortars, is that very different from when you go into e-commerce like Amazon and Etsy and stuff like that, and you have to know the laws surrounding those platforms?
So there is a bit of a learning curve, but I wouldn't say it was that steep, because a lot of the businesses that are already brick and mortar are already online in some aspect. And so a lot of that kind of transferred over. The big thing of that learning process was primarily how they process payments, how they accept payments, and then also they receive their goods coming in. So brick and mortar, usually it's kind of that standard shipping process, really where when I work with the e-commerce sellers, a lot of times, there's more of importation aspect where they're trying to figure that out.
It's 11 o'clock.
Oh, I'm sorry about that.
That's all right. Thanks
the biggest part of that. I thought I had turned it off. And so that's kind of the biggest part of the big transition was, the brick and mortar is kind of the same, but with e-commerce, you're looking at kind of that broader picture and looking at how the national laws apply more than just the state laws.
Hey, Danielle. So in thinking about the differences between brick and mortar and virtual companies, things like the Wayfair.com versus South Dakota judgment a couple of years ago that speaks specifically to sales tax collection and Nexus inventory. Do you find that applies a lot more to e-com companies or pretty much the same?
So I would say it applies more to e-com companies, at least from what I've seen, especially with the tax collection and where businesses are deciding where they want to register their company, and that's where I'm seeing the biggest change come from that. So before, we were seeing a lot of brick and mortar locations just choosing to register within their state, where e-commerce, they kind of had more implications than just Delaware's protections. They're looking at, you know, those tax implications, filing implications, all of that as well.
Awesome. Thanks for that.
I have to imagine from a legal side, like the landscape is changing so quickly. I imagine as an attorney, it's probably even hard for you to keep up with, because to Dan's point from a moment ago, that lawsuit changed everything for e-commerce sellers, and like everybody was struggling to, and I think still to today is struggling to comply with that law and figure out what the ramifications are for them. So I would think, and maybe you could speak to, you know, how it changed the landscape of your business.
So that was actually before my time when I into it. So I didn't have to really deal with the transition. I never onboarded after that end, and with understanding that part of it. So I didn't really have to deal with so much of working transit, but being able with others, and a lot come to me like, where do I go? I've heard that Wyoming is the best. And then, okay, well, let's actually figure out, you know, what kind of, because that's a big part of the taxes and the sales tax. But not only that, kind of your annual filings. And so that was looking at which states have those. And so that's what my big part when I was working with sellers going through that transition period. Sometimes now when they come to me and they're like, hey, what happened? Why do I have this tax bill? Well, were you collecting it? How were your records? And look at the state that you're registered in. And then also some states now, especially I've seen, you know, California, New York, they're looking at where that consumer is located, trying to help sellers kind of figure it out. And so sometimes we're seeing that double taxation where sellers are charging one, the state where the consumer is charging another, and sellers aren't keeping the right records to when they need to do their quarterly filings to see if they're actually in compliance or not. So it's really looking at where the consumer is located and now where the seller is located.
I will say that on the Amazon platform specifically over the last 2 years, as states have changed the verbiage in their laws in regard to nexus sales tax collection, Amazon has fallen in line and started calculating, collecting, and remitting on behalf of third-party sellers in the vast majority of states now.
And so that is a marketplace facilitator law, right? So that makes it a lot easier. And Danielle, I don't know how much experience you have with that, but I know at least here in Connecticut where I am, they moved to marketplace facilitator and it made it so much easier. But at the same time, and you probably had this, California has been after me for years trying to collect 10 years of taxes because I had at one point I had a negligible number of units, like a dozen units of a product at a fulfillment center in California, and that established nexus, and they've been trying to collect taxes for years of sales, and they've stopped bothering me for now, but it is a threat to my business for sure because it's going to be a giant tax bill. And yeah, it's interesting how that all kind of came to a head in the last few years.
Well, Brendan, if you get in hot water, I know a good attorney you can call, right, Danielle?
Well, I don't do tax law, but I will definitely work with you to I know, but it's because there's a joke that most of our law books were about this thick. And then you have your tax book, which was about this thick.
Yeah, for sure.
That never gets updated. They just add to it. They don't update previous codes. They just continue adding to it.
Of course.
So if taxes isn't really what you specialize in, why don't you tell the audience what you specifically do or what the majority of the work that comes in is, like what your clients are after I can't talk, with regards to your services.
Yeah, so it's that intellectual property protection. So I do trademarks, copyrights, and trade secrets, and all aspects of those, as well as corporate and business structures. So LLC, corporation, S Corp, those types of documents. I also do employment work. So I work with those documents for employees, so employment agreements, non-disclosure agreements, non-compete agreements. So kind of that corporate transactional side of it.
So prior to us recording, you had talked about the importance of copywriting and trademarking with regards to hijackers and a lot of the issues of suspension. Can you speak a little bit more broadly about, or not broadly, more specifically about what you encourage people to do and how that helps them with regards to hijackers coming onto their platform and taking over their business essentially?
Yes, so with trademarks and copyrights, so there's, I usually tell clients as soon as they start their branding process to apply for the process of their trademark. And then once they have their original work of authorship, so some form, if it can be copyrighted, to go through the copyright process. So once you go through that process, at the end of it, if you do get registration, you can actually submit your registration to a government program called Stop Fakes, which helps prevent, so that's through the United States Customs and Borders, and it actually helps prevent some of those infringing goods from coming in. But it also gives you kind of that protection. So if you do have somebody that goes online and they're alleging that you are infringing on their intellectual property, so with Amazon, Etsy, all of those places, they have that policy where you can go, hey, this person is infringing. And they're, you know, all they do is submit that, and then you're in the seller dispute, or one of the sellers there is, you know, all they did, they changed a vowel around, they changed something where it kind of gives the same commercial impression. It's the same way that you enunciate it out loud. It just has that one vowel changed. And so now that infringer is basically able to take over that account if they didn't have those protections in place. So once you have that trademark registered in place, you've already presented to the government that I'm the owner of this mark. I've alleged that, you know, under penalty of perjury, essentially, that I'm the true owner, and this is when I started using the mark, where the infringer didn't have to prove otherwise, that they own this mark before you, that they were using this before you. And so basically it kind of gives you that presumption of being able to go back to Amazon, whoever might have suspended your account based off of that initial, hey, they're on my intellectual property. It kind of gives you that ability to go back, which is what I do with a lot of clients. If they have those protections, it's really easy to send it in that says, hey, no, we're already the registered owner. Here's the proof that they're actually infringing and trying to take over my brand. If you don't have that, it becomes that uphill battle of you're trying to now kind of do a tit for tat, essentially. He said, she said, trying to argue something. If that answered your question. If not, then I can try to clarify.
There are follow-up questions to that. But if your infringer is, and I mean, we all hate to say it, but it's true, it's usually in China, how do the international laws apply in regards to stuff like infringement? Like, you know, you have these systems in place that hopefully keep them from making these claims or taking over your company, but how much can you really do to stop them from continuing to do it?
So it's a hard one when it comes to international. So if they're overseas, there's certain treaties, depending on what country it's from, there are certain treaties that they have to follow, and sometimes it just becomes impossible. So we have to allow, or not allow, but rely on essentially our government's help, as well as the e-commerce platform. And at least the ones that I worked with before, once we have kind of that registration, that proof, to be able to present to them and show that this as essentially is over, that kind of helps. And there's actually been a strong push with the intellectual property community, especially with the United States Trademark Office, where they're actually requiring foreign applications, they have to have a United States attorney working with them, or they have to be domiciled in the United States. Well, of course, they've come up with ways to try and overcome that. And so now you can't have a PO box on a trademark application. You can't have a UPS address. You actually have to have a physical address. And so we're trying, there's ways, but really it's kind of relying on those e-commerce platforms to do their part in trying to get it. Otherwise, it's really trying out with those international treaties. And sometimes some governments, and I hate to say it, China is one of those governments, it's easy for sellers to come in and infringe on those goods that are from China.
So is there any way, so you're filing this with CBP, so Customs and Border Protection. Is there any way to use them as a gatekeeper to try to stop this stuff from even getting into the US? Like, I know they only inspect a small percentage of containers, and even if they do, they may not be aware of a trademark infringing product in that container. But like, as a seller, you would at least hope that you would have some early line of defense against the stuff even getting in the US before you rely on Amazon, which is notoriously difficult to deal with, to get them to fix your problem. Like, in a perfect world, they would catch you at the border and say, this, violates, this trademark or this patent, and turn it around. I'm sure in real life that doesn't happen too often, but.
No, I do think the Stop Fakes program, which is where the Borders program, you have to submit your registration to them. So some people miss that step. They think it automatically goes. The government doesn't talk to each other. So one branch isn't talking to the next one. So you actually have to submit your registration. And if you have an inkling, so if you see something start coming up online, which goes to policing your intellectual property, so actually making sure that you're doing those searches to see, is somebody out there trying to infringe, you can alert them. So they have that program. And I think, at least from my experience, it's been limited. I'm not constantly calling them every day, but at least, they take it seriously because they understand, especially under our administration. Who knows what's going to happen in January, but at least under our current administration, they have been pretty strict with that. But you have to alert them, otherwise they don't know to watch for it.
Yeah.
They're limited in their capacity too.
Yeah, interesting.
Anymore, you would pretty much tell most sellers, if not all sellers, that they really should be brand registered if they're going to sell specifically on Amazon.
Yeah, especially Amazon. And a lot of sellers that are already going to Amazon usually end up wanting to get Amazon brand registered. And I also think it gives, that your reputation, at least as a consumer, when I'm looking at, if I see that registered symbol or that copyright symbol, something, it gives me, oh, this has more authority, like this is an actual legitimate product, versus if I don't see that. So I think just your reputation and authority, it just helps in a business sense to have that. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, I don't think it's any secret that brand registry not only offers all those things you just mentioned, Danielle, but there's also, it opens a whole suite of other marketing options, which we've talked about on previous episodes. There's also an aesthetic side of it where you can build big, beautiful listings with embedded images and videos. And it really does just open up a whole suite of things that you can better portray your product. And to speak to your point, it really does lend credibility all around. Yeah. Consumer confidence, so I guess is what I would say.
Yeah, one of the things we had talked about before recording as well is we were talking about being on the proactive side of the legal issues as opposed to being on the defense after it happens. So you had talked a little bit about what measures you can take to ensure that, I mean, I guess you kind of already addressed a lot of them, but what measures you can take to ensure that you are policing your store properly.
Yeah, so, and when I say policing, it's really taking measures. So some attorneys will put you on a watch service where you have a separate company that has your portfolio, so your various brands, and they pretty much do their automatic algorithm. And some of those are fairly expensive, other ones are fairly cheap. If you're on the end of you're wanting to do this yourself, it's simply, conducting a search at least once a week on Google, on Amazon, just typing in your name, but also kind of switching up the letters around. So if you're looking at, an E and an I might sound the same at the end of words. So kind of switching up those letters, an S and a C might sound the same. So kind of just switching those around and just doing your Google search and your Amazon search and seeing if this comes up. But then also watching your own brand. Sometimes there's some people that miss those red flags where it's, wow, you know, this product I was only selling a couple of every once, and now all of a sudden I'm selling that like every single day in multiple batches. So it might have been something that you're selling once a week and it's just kind of been that standard thing, and then all of a sudden you're selling 10 a day for 2 weeks. Well, that should be a sign that you have somebody else out there that's trying to take your product, and they might be rebranding it into their own name, or they might be getting it. I've actually seen kind of, so on the trademark office, we kind of laugh at some of the specimens. Those are the pictures of your product that you send, and one of them was actually baby wipes, and they took just their own label and literally laid it over the top of the other label, and you could see through the image that other person's label below it.
Is that not what private labeling is? No, I'm just kidding.
And so it's just those little things that you have to laugh at.
Yeah.
But the government allowed that trademark to proceed to registration. And so then, and so then it's kind of one of those, okay, now you're trying to not only, you know, had you been policing that mark and being like, oh, wow, we saw, because all they changed two letters around at the beginning of the trademark name. And that was it. And they were very similar letters, so the same pronunciation. And so had that person been policing a mark, they could have easily opposed that registration, which is a much more affordable process, sent a cease and desist letter, even more affordable. And most of the time infringers, once they receive a cease and desist letter, they actually do stop, because they know that this other person wants to protect their brand and they're going to take it seriously.
Yeah, if I can just tack on, since you're talking about things to look out for, things to keep on your radar screen, red flags, another one that I've had multiple times with clients is they ask me the following question. If I own this product and I'm the only seller, why do I have the buy box 81% of the time? Now, there's a bunch of reasons that can happen. One of them is because somebody was testing and they've sold some units and now they've tested it, it works, and they probably have a very large shipment of units coming over from Asia. But if you're starting to lose the buy box and you haven't done that before, investigating if other people are selling or other people have been on that, or keeping a much closer eye on the number of sellers that are on, I say your listing, but they're all Amazon's listings. Legally, you know, they own the listing and we're allowed to use it. If you have brand registry, then maybe other people can't use it, maybe they can, but it all depends on the IP. But Amazon owns all the listings, so anyone can really come on there unless you've protected yourself. But losing the buy box a percentage of the time can be an indicator of, hey, someone else is selling this and that's why you don't have it 100% of the time. To check that, you can simply go into Seller Central, Inventory, Manage Inventory, and click on your specific seller SKU link. And it'll take you to a beautiful page with a bunch of information, one of which is buy box percentage.
Danielle, have you seen any good IP like theft tools? So like I definitely seen, and maybe Dan, you've seen this, is software that'll monitor your listing. Because if you have thousands of listings, it's really difficult to stay on top of who, you know, which may have been hijacked, particularly if the hijacker in the scenario you described, Dan, only had 1 or 5 or 10 units for a test batch. They might all sell through before you notice. So like, I've never used them, but I know there are tools out there that monitor your listing, will give you a real-time alert the moment that somebody's selling on your listing. Or if you're a bigger brand, you know, if your brand is being sold on an unauthorized site, or can do, you know, more of an internet-wide monitoring as well. So I don't know, Danielle, are you familiar with any of those tools?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different trademark watch services. That's kind of what they're called. So if you just do like Google brand watch services, trademark watch services, and you'll have a bunch of different ones pop up. I don't have any in particular that I recommend because a lot of times it's based off of somebody's price preference. I haven't come across any that I would say stay against. Most of them are decent, but it's really kind of what you prefer. But yeah, if you go in brand watch, trademark watch, and you can actually hire a company, and really you're just hiring their you know, ability to use their software because they have, you know, some program that's able to go and can't constantly do that. And you can set it based on your preferences. Like, I want this to run every day, I want this to run once a week. You know, I'm really only concerned, let's just run this once a month kind of thing.
I was actually curious for you, Brendan, because you own a rebate company. Do you guys have systems in place to keep people from buying a bunch of inventory for super cheap and then reselling it?
Yeah, sorry, my dog's here. Yeah, so, wow, the one day I bring him over here.
Where's your cat? I want to hear your cat now.
That'll be the next thing, yeah. Yeah, so to your question, so yeah, so we do, that's, it's somewhat of a problem. You know, we occasionally will find a seller that, you know, creates a shopper account, you know, redeems these promotions and then goes on to try to resell the product. A lot of times, though, it's an interesting thing. We get like false alarms. So we'll have a seller run a promotion on rebate and they'll say, you know, now I see, you know, my product for sale on eBay. And what a lot of times it is it's actually arbitrage. So what they're doing is the eBay listing, if, I don't know, Dan, you've probably seen this, and McLean as well. Your products may be for sale all over eBay, and the seller doesn't have them. The moment you buy from them on eBay, you'll see a sale come through on Amazon. So a lot of what sellers perceive is resale by other sellers is actually an arbitrage, you know, scenario. So
Yeah, to expound on that, there's a niche, a sub niche of selling online, and that's exactly what it is. People scour Amazon and eBay and Etsy and Wayfair and Sears and Walmart, and the list goes on, and they try and find inefficiencies in the marketplace. So, and it was a pretty effective business model back in the day. As a matter of fact, 10 years ago, I used to flip Walmart stuff on Amazon. That is against policy, just for the record now, but people still do it, and people still do it in different and creative ways. And if you have the time or software to spend, you could probably carve out a fair living doing it, but it's a dangerous game. I'd say it's just on Amazon anyway. It's just as dangerous as drop shipping. You just shouldn't do it. It's and the reason it's dangerous is because it's hard to meet all the metrics and ship times, delivery times. One of the reasons specifically drop shippers get banned from Amazon is because you're not allowed to buy and ship in from another retailer, which would exclude all the companies that I just mentioned. So I am familiar with that. I don't recommend it in today's marketplace, but I understand why people try it.
Yeah. And as it pertains, you know, to law, it's not really IP theft. It's just, you know, a sales channel outside of the norm, but it's not
right.
What we talked about before. Yeah.
Right. I think that would technically be covered under like the Sherman and Clayton antitrust acts, which allow you to resell anything that you buy within, I guess, right? Is that right? I'm not a lawyer, for the record.
You just pretty much, yeah. There's a little more, but yeah, if you purchase it, you can resell it. You just can't, you know, intentionally kind of price gouge. So that's a big thing that comes out of that. But
you bet.
That's what we're talking about, yeah.
How do they determine, this is a little off topic, but just since you brought up price gouging, and maybe you know, how do they determine what is considered price gouging and what is reselling? Like, is there a percentage that they go through and they're like, okay, this is illegal because you've increased your margins this much? Or is it just based on the product, who's selling it, case by case?
I honestly don't know the answer to that. I'm not sure how the formulation works. And I do know it is by product. And also during, if there is kind of an emergency crisis, what type of emergency crisis, but I don't know how they do that formulation. I don't know
like you can't sell bottles of water for $20 to hurricane victims.
Or that guy in Canada who was selling hand sanitizer during the pandemic for like, forget how much he was selling it for, but I know he got arrested for doing that. Anyway, I just thought it was an interesting concept to know what, what is considered gouging, what's not, because you still can go on Amazon and find hand sanitizer masks for ridiculous prices. And you're like,
Yeah, eBay is the same.
I love, I don't know if you guys saw, there was a, I think Wall Street Journal article about how Amazon had kicked off a ton of sellers for price gouging on hand sanitizer. And then in the article, they showed an Amazon listing, sold by and shipped by Amazon. And it was sanitizer for like $100. And it was this little thing of it. So their algorithm accidentally was gouging as well, because it was just based on supply and demand. And then Amazon was super embarrassed. They took down their own listing. But yeah, no, it definitely goes on. So.
A lot of people don't realize Amazon, there's not a guy in a back room somewhere setting all the prices. It's all based on what Amazon thinks customers will pay for like type products, history of that product. So it's, it just, if people are selling sanitizer for $90 or $110, they're going to come in right at that $100 mark to be competitive. And there's just no, it's just a computer doing it. So yeah, fun.
So getting back to your profession specifically, Danielle.
Sorry.
No, I love this. I love the open conversations and where we go. But I'm curious to know, what is your favorite part of your job and what's your least favorite part?
So my favorite part is seeing companies grow and watching them kind of fulfill their dreams. So a lot of entrepreneurs, I see them, they start as their online business and they kind of move over to their either own storefront. They're able to kind of grow and make it their own. And so that's what I love, especially because I'm now a business owner, but before that, my background is in business. And so just being able to see people accomplish their dreams, I absolutely love that. And that's when I get that call at the end of the day, that's like, Danielle, you helped me do this. Thank you so much. That's what warms my heart. What I hate.
Fulfilling.
It is. What I hate is dealing with people who are they're mean and cruel, which happens a lot kind of in the IP world, because you deal with a lot of just trademark and copyright bullies, people who know they take on the little guy because they can either outfund them, they can take on, they have the time, the resources, and so they're just going to take on the little guys. And I hate seeing that, because a lot of times my clients are the little people, and they just don't have either the resources to be able to take them on, or if they do have the resources, it's not worth it for them. It's more affordable for them to go on a different path. And I hate seeing that, because that for them, it's their dream that just got basically scrunched by the bigger person. And that's what I don't like about it. It comes.
Do you recommend that most businesses that are selling online have a lawyer as like on backup, like immediately at all times?
I do, especially even if it's just kind of you have that connection with them, because if you find yourself in a situation where you're, faced down with a time frame, because a lot of times in law, you have certain time periods that you have to do stuff. If your account is suspended, you have certain times you have to do stuff. You just have certain time frames. And if you already have a relationship with that attorney that already knows your business, already knows your goals, already knows, you can pick up that phone. Okay, here's our game plan. Here's how we can move forward. If you're then trying to find an attorney during that time period, you're already stressed, you're already worried, and you might not find that attorney that you like to work with, the one that understands your business. So having that relationship on the back end is going to save you kind of those resources going forward. And then also having an attorney, they can give you different ideas. Hey, did you think of this? Oh no, do I need that? A lot of times, people, I have this website. Can you please look it over to make sure I have all of these things done? And great thing about attorneys is we also write a lot, so we can help identify silly typos, but can, help make sure that you're in compliance. So that way you're not facing the government later because you decided to violate some sort of act, or, something happens later, you have that relationship. So you don't have to go through trying to find an attorney at the last minute.
Does that involve having a retainer or just on goodwill, essentially?
So every attorney is different. So some attorneys do charge. So some attorneys, you can pick up the phone, call them, have a 10-minute conversation with them about how, something goes, and they're going to charge you per hour for that time. Other attorneys, which is what I do, I'm a flat rate attorney, so I don't charge hourly. So if you come to me with a certain service and we have that business relationship, within that service. So it's not, but each attorney is different, and it just depends on how you have that relationship, and kind of that ongoing relationship. But some people, they do every month, they pay me a certain fee, and within that fee, it includes, phone calls, emails, being able to guide them on different processes. Attorneys are going to charge you per hour, do general counsel. It just depends on what you prefer, and just find that attorney that kind of fits within those parameters for you.
And of all the platforms you work with, which one would you say is the biggest pain in the ass?
There's two, and so it's Amazon and Shopify.
I'm so shocked Amazon's on the list. Just kidding.
Yeah, Amazon and Shopify. And so both are, they're great platforms. They're wonderful for people to get up and going on. Each of them have their own difficulties and differences, but I like the places where I have somebody I can talk with on the phone. And those two, you're left with a general email that we'll get back to in a couple months, unless you have to find some random phone number that goes to some person. I would rather talk with somebody than.
Yeah, and Danielle, there's a link between the last two questions, and it really comes down to advocacy. You're talking about what you like and don't like and things like that. You're truly an advocate for your clients, and it's tougher to find advocates for your clients within those venues.
True.
I have a question for you. I know that you build business structures like LLCs and S corps for companies, and some of those types of entities require quarterly minute filings. Do you also handle that?
Yes, so I do corporate books, and so I work with companies on making sure that their corporate books are up to date, as well as when they need to hold their meetings, if they're supposed to hold their meetings, and what they need to include within their meetings.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially for S corps, that a lot of requirements to maintain that corporation status.
Sure.
I know.
So if anyone,
I was going to say, I know we're probably winding down on time, but just one area I've heard a lot of talk about as far as law and e-commerce companies is ADA compliance of websites. So for anybody who operates an independent site, I know that there's been, a crazy number of lawsuits recently for sites that are not ADA compliant. I can tell you're smiling, so I'm glad. I think you probably know about that. It's definitely something of interest, to me. So.
Yeah, it's a moneymaker for attorneys because the ADA has statutory damages, and it was a big thing here in Arizona 3-4 years ago. There was a law that made millions of dollars because all they have to do is, have that complaint. And now I think with most of the websites, they've have plugins now, which I think has helped make a lot of sites now ADA compliant. But yeah, that was a big thing, and people aren't on top of it. So if they don't have those alt image text or the able to read the background, I haven't seen much of that lately, now that there's those plugins that help on that back end. And so that's usually what, if people do come to me after their site is built and I can tell. So the first thing I do, most people have screen readers on, if you guys know that, but your computer has a screen reader. So you can go in there and have it read to you. And if you have it with that, then I would just talk to your web host, or if you're on your own website, just to make sure you have that plugin installed, which kind of does that work for you. And I think they're free now. At least the one I have is free.
Yeah. So who is actually I mean, these are just lawyers that bring the loss. Like, do they have to show that they are disabled and encountered some issue, or is it truly they reap the benefits of finding these sites and suing the companies? Is that this?
So the lawyers that we had here that were doing it in Arizona, they would find the violation first and then find a plaintiff. So they would, so it started with the brick and mortar locations, and they would see like one of the handicap signs wasn't at the right height. And so they would just sit out there and wait until somebody actually pulled up. And so then they kind of did that. They got in trouble by the Supreme Court. And so then they moved to the online realm. And they would just sit there and kind of wait to see when a plaintiff would come along. I think they were using Reddit or something along those lines that, hey, has anybody been to this site? And did you experience issues? And then, oh, now we have a plaintiff. Now we can send, a lot of times it was just sending a demand letter, and the company would pay. And when you're getting 30% off of $1,000 and you're doing 10 of those a day, it was money making for attorneys to do that.
You know, and people wonder why there's so many jokes about attorneys. By the way, do you know how many there are? 2. The rest are true stories. Sorry. All right, I'm done.
We had to throw in there.
Well, I wrote a bunch of them for the episode, but decided not to. You know.
We want to scare you away.
Yeah. So really interesting, though, ADA compliant websites. I guess the days of, you know, with all these laws and if you want to process payments on your website, there's just a ton of legalities surrounding that, as there should be. But like in the pioneering days, kind of when Brendan and I started off in e-commerce, you could have like your nephew that was in 8th grade build the website and you'd still do okay. But really, this industry has matured a great deal, and the laws, while behind the times, have matured along with it. So I think anyone that's not ADA compliant and has all their T's crossed, I's dotted, you just have to nowadays. There's just a ton of liability.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially with e-commerce sellers. One of the things, so speaking of like their own personal websites, if they have those, is to make sure that you have not only your terms of service for the United States, but because you are online, the most strictest is the EU GDRP, which have to be in compliance with your online. And again, there's plugins for that. So just making sure that, you know, you're doing your due diligence, because you don't want the EU coming after you for those little things. They really are, you know, in theme of it, little things, those little, you know, your privacy policy at the bottom of your website. Right. Most people read it, but you have to have it there. For
return policy is another thing that people get crazy about.
Mm-hmm. Especially if it has like, oh, we have no returns, and then you read their terms of service and it's mixed messages, which gets
right.
a lot of people into issues. For sure.
Well, if anyone wants your services, how can they get a hold of you, Danielle?
Yeah, so you can either call, so 623-3153. The easiest way is usually to just go online to trogdonlawgroup.com, and there's that contact us page there.
Awesome, and we'll make sure to put that in the comments so anyone that's interested can directly contact you. Can you repeat the phone number one more time, because you were breaking up?
Oh yeah, 602-341-6353.
Awesome. Well, do anyone else have any questions for our awesome guest?
No, I think you did a great job. And so basically what you're saying is if people want to sell stuff online and not deal with the lawyery stuff, you can handle most of that for them.
Yes.
Got it.
Great summary.
Awesome. All right, well, thank you for coming on. We really appreciate it. I'll let everyone go around the room real fast and plug themselves, even though I know you just did, Danielle. Brendan, you can go.
Sure. I'm Brendan Fields, owner of Rize. We're an Amazon e-commerce based launch platform.
Dan?
Dan Trumbull, dantrumbleconsulting.com, Amazon consulting, e-commerce consulting, business structure consulting. Check me out there for a free 30-minute appointment.
And I'm McLean Warren with Liaison Marketing. We're kind of an all-purpose marketing company that focuses on Amazon sellers, so anything from PPC to photography to listing optimizations. So hit any of us up. You've got quite a broad spectrum of experts here that can all help you with your business. So thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Bye.